Hello and good evening from London. I'm Orna Ross from the Alliance of Independent Authors, and this is the first of our ALLi Insights seminars this year, 2015, brand new year. Lots of new things happening, as always, in the indie author space. And I'm really delighted and very excited to have Mr. Joel Friedlander here this evening. Hello, Joel.
Hello, Orna, and it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. What a lot of people don't know, in fact, most people don't know, is that when I was thinking about founding the Alliance back just 3 years ago, actually, this time 3 years ago, I was in California and I asked the advice of this good man as to what I should do. And he said, I think you're crazy, but go for it. Do you remember that?
I remember it quite well, and I remember we had a really great discussion that day.
Fantastic, really brilliant.
Orna, I just want to say it's amazing how much you've accomplished in that amount of time. I mean, I'm really quite impressed with the growth of ALLi and all the programs and the tremendous engagement with your members.
Thanks so much. Yeah, well, we do our best. There's a great team, which really helps, and the community are so fantastic as well. Obviously, indie authors are, just stunning in terms of what they can do and how go-get-it they always are. So this evening we're going to be talking about book design and all the various things that you're interested in, Joel. But you're best known as the book designer, right?
I could have called it a book designer, I guess.
Wouldn't have had the same ring to it at all. And you've approached it in a really sort of interesting way, but let's just talk a little bit. Everybody who's here and who's attending and who's listening is going to have one sort of question uppermost in their mind, I think, and that is, how do I use book design to reach my reader to sell my books? So can you give us just as succinctly as you possibly can the sort of key points that people should think about when they're starting out? Let's talk first of all to people who are just beginning to self-publish and what they should be thinking about specifically around design.
Well, the first thing they should be thinking is get a good editor.
Does that apply for design as well? Whenever anybody asks me.
Not really design oriented, but look, I'm a book designer. I've been doing this for many years, and even I have to say that if you only have $5 to spend on your book, hire an editor. It'll do you much more good. Yeah, in terms of selling books, really what we're talking about is book covers. It's pretty rare for most books that aren't like photo books or illustrated books that rely a lot on graphic images. Most people don't buy them because they love the typeface the book was set in. It's just not the way buying decisions are made. Or they love the line length or the amount of leading. I mean, those things are really, that's a different need we have to fulfill with that type of design. But when we talk about selling books, really that's number 2 on my list after you hire your editor, is to make sure you have a really good cover designer working on your book. And that really is reliant on what your budget is. You can say whatever your budget is, but within that range, there are people who are better book cover designers and worse, or people who are more familiar with the readers you're trying to reach. And that's really where it gets important. Now, I was on a call with an author yesterday, and it was pretty interesting because I did the book for this author in 2009. Now he's come back with a second book, and he's already started to learn a lot about publishing. When he did his first book, he was very concerned, maybe a little too concerned, about how much he liked his book cover. And we spent weeks going back and forth with variations and creating little tiny variations in color and size, and until he just felt so good about the cover. Now, in this conversation I had with him yesterday, I said, now, Mark, you probably realize by this time that we don't really care that much what the author thinks of the cover. You know, even, and he said, well, I got a lot of good feedback from my friends. And I said, well, even if you sell a copy to every one of your friends, that's not going to be very impressive, is it? For book sales, I mean, how many friends could you have? I said, you have to realize our whole emphasis is on all the people who don't know you and have no idea what your book is about. And you got about 3 seconds to sell them, if that. So that's who we're designing the book covers for, and that has a really major impact. It can have a major impact on your sales.
Without a doubt. So, we can't talk about selling books to all readers because you just can't do it that way. You've got to get really specific, isn't that right? So, what are the key questions that somebody should be asking themselves before they commission somebody to do the cover? What do they need to be considering?
Well, you have to really drop back, and this is the biggest need that most authors have who are just coming into this publishing space, and that is to be really clear on what it is that you're trying to do with the book. I find many authors haven't really given this enough consideration, like exactly who are they publishing the book for? Who are their ideal readers? Who's going to buy the book? Did they write it for a specific audience? We've got fiction authors, nonfiction authors. Every book is somewhat different, although the fiction and the nonfiction really have different paths, that they travel. But the things that they should be thinking about is, what is my goal? Like, if my goal is to publish a book, get it into, like here in the United States, national distribution, have it in like 3,000 or 4,000 bookstores, and really try to drive traffic to those bookstores, well, I have news for you. You really need a top-end book production. Your design has to be, if you want to get that kind of attention, you want to be booked by media people, you're running that kind of book launch, then you need a top-quality product to go out there with. And that is going to cost more money. You have to have the budget to do it, not just for design, but for all the other elements that come together in that kind of program. So, we're really trying to be marketing driven. On the other hand, if you have like a manual, let's say, for people who prune trees, now that could be an extremely valuable book. Those books make a huge amount of money when they're published properly. They have very dedicated audiences. The people know right away whether they want that book. They're paying for it out of their, quote unquote business expenses. You can get a higher retail price on it. The design of that book, particularly the cover, is not going to be nearly as critical as the book you're trying to push out into a big retail rollout. So if you're clear about that and you know the kind of people who trim trees for a living, then your whole approach to the design of the book is going to be very different. So that's the biggest question you really have to ask yourself. And it might actually be worthwhile sitting down with either somebody who's been through this process, or somebody from ALLi who's had a lot more experience publishing, to talk about your whole marketing concept for the book. This is the most difficult for fiction authors than for nonfiction authors, but it's still really important to go through this process, particularly your first time out.
Sure, absolutely. And I think if I could pick up on a strand that you mentioned there, and I think this is something that we're seeing, it's undeniable now that in order to, talking about that reader who wants to, if not through the bookstores, but maybe through the online bookstores as well, reach a readership that is not given. So, your nonfiction book, the Pruning Trees book, is a relatively easy sell all the way along, and it's quite easy to line up all your ducks in a row around that because it's clear, it's identifiable, it's niche, and it's targeted. So that's relatively easy. Is when you get into fiction and you get into consumer, trade and the buyers of books, passing trade on Amazon and so on, that and in bookstores, that things become more challenging. And I think what you said there about we've got to think about book. We can't think about book design in isolation. So, you know, a lot of writers will write their book and then, oh, I better get a cover, and oh, I better put it out there, and oh, now I better think about marketing. Really, it begins with the writer working out who they are and who they're writing for. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, and you know, writers are funny. Sometimes they don't actually know that when they start the book. You know, and that's another big difference between fiction and nonfiction. I mean, I think fiction authors in general are better off not thinking about marketing while they're writing, because it's really irrelevant, and it would take you out of what you're doing. On the other hand, nonfiction marketers, I think the marketing ought to be baked in before you even start writing. I mean, the marketing drives a lot of the creation of nonfiction books, because there's a hole in the market or a need that you can identify in the market, and then you create the book to fill the need. And fiction, of course, is completely different, because the need there is within the author. The author has the need to tell this story or to write this book, and so they're answering their own need. And if people could just understand the difference between those two things, it would clear up a lot of confusion.
Absolutely. So let's just talk about that fiction writer then, who you know wants to has finished the book. Let's start there. So they driven by this illness or itch or whatever you want to call it that we are inflicted with as writers, and they've written the book, and so now they have some kind of concept of what this book is about, and they want to hire somebody who's going to kind of put a cover on the book. A mistake we see a lot is that writers try to get the content of the book onto the cover. I'm sure that's not the approach that you advocate. So what should they be doing? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I think this is an appropriate place to pause to mention my continuing effort to educate authors about fiction, about book covers, and specifically ebook covers. Because for several years now, I've been running this monthly contest on my blog, the eBook Cover Design Awards. And, you know, we get tremendous participation, which makes a lot of work for me, but that's okay. And, you know, we're getting coming in. And they really run the whole gamut. It's just fascinating, because they go from everything from somebody who, you know, obviously took about 15 minutes one day and sat down with a Photoshop and like slapped something together because they needed a cover, up to like covers being designed by top quality pro cover designers that cost thousands of dollars. So you can see them all in one place. And that's actually pretty valuable, because you can see the difference between the amateur efforts and the ones that are much more highly targeted. And it's always easy to see the designers who understand the genre that they're designing for. Because in fiction, that's really the crux of the matter. I mean, if you have a designer who has designed for your genre, maybe you're into YA fantasy novels, and you know, you need a designer who understands that genre and knows what those book buyers are looking for. And that is probably the most important factor in all the decisions you're going to make about packaging and presenting your book. Because think about it, the book cover and the typography that's used for the title, that's going to become kind of the brand of the book. You know, it's going to represent the book. If you end up with a series of books, it's probably going to be pretty important to the overall look of the series. This whole design idea, the concept, could go on for years in this one series. And so that decision is crucial. And I think that's probably, you know, you want a designer who understands the needs of your genre and somebody you can communicate well with. And I think, you know, once you've assured yourself you're inside your budget, that's how you win. You satisfy all of those things, and you're going to get. I also spend time, Orna, looking at bestseller lists, and I advise authors to do that too. You know, if you're writing a book in a specific category, you know, Old West romance or something, you know, go look at the top 100 sellers in that category. And you will see what people are used to buying. They think that a book in the old Western romance category is supposed to look like that. It's not supposed to look like, you know, the one your cousin Dave threw together for you, because he doesn't have a clue what those readers are looking for. So
Absolutely. I
all
always start actually with every designer I work with. I always start by sending, by looking at what is working and what's selling at the moment and sending them the covers then from those lists that are speaking to me or that I think capture the emotional resonance of the book. Because I think that's probably what you're trying to do with the cover more than sort of tell people what's in it as such. It's kind of capture a mood for fiction. Would you agree with that?
Totally. The way I think of it is what I'm really looking for is the author's tone. There's kind of you read a book, a novel, there's kind of a background texture that's almost, it's not perceptible so much on the surface, but there's an overall kind of feeling of the author's voice behind the story. And that is what we're really looking to capture for the cover. And the problem of people, authors wanting to actually show all the important events in the book or the places where they occur, that's something you have to fight against. The authors are generally not very good at designing book covers for their own books. I mean, they're just too close to the story. And we see this in the competition all the time, and I talk to authors about it, but they want to have a picture of the ring that he gave her on their date, and they want to have the feather that she was holding, because that's crucial to the story, and the mountain in the background where the big argument took place, because that's crucial to the story. And pretty soon you got like all these floating pieces of visual noise just totally confusing you, and that's not going to help. That's not going to do anything for you.
Yeah,
and of course, a professional.
Sorry, we're getting a slight time lag. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying that many of these covers that are failures in a sense. I mean, you can look at them and see, aha. Well, if they just picked this one element and focused on that, it would have riveted people and made them really curious about the story. You didn't need the other 11. You could have just gotten rid of all of those. But those are the kind of decisions that professional designers know how to make.
Exactly, and I think that's your point of authors not being able to do it for themselves. I think very often that tone you're talking about, we don't even know it's there. We're writing, we're caught up with the character, we're caught up with the story, we're caught up with the climax, the plot, whatever. And in actual fact, we've revealed a whole load of stuff about ourselves as people probably, but certainly as writers. And that's where the real sort of emotional engagement with the reader kind of happens. And so there's a challenge for designers, because they often won't have time to read the book, will they? How much of a book does a designer need to read? Do you read the blurb? How do you make up your mind how you capture that indefinable something we're talking about when it comes to fiction?
Yeah, well, I think all designers probably vary. I can tell you from my point of view, and this is one of the most common questions I get asked when talking about design. Hey, Joel, do you read the books? Well, when I'm designing nonfiction books, there's no real need to read the book. A nonfiction book, displays exactly what it's about and the audience it's intended for in its structure and its contents and the way the chapters are arranged. You can just scan the subheads. You already know everything you need to know about the book to design it. But the opposite is true of fiction. And in fiction, you can't really skim the book. I mean, it just doesn't work. Now, I might not read or have time to read the entire text of any particular book, but if it's a fiction book, I am definitely going to sit there and put some time into reading at least, 3-4 chapters to get partway into the book to really get the sense that I have a feeling for that tone, and that what the whole kind of overall feeling of the novel is that we want to portray on the cover. And a lot of that does have, it's very subtle, and there are many devices we use, but mostly we use our kind of educated design sensibility to turn that visual into something that's going to be evocative of the book, that's going to interest readers, that has some kind of hook to it. So there's actually something of interest that might draw people in, and all the other tools that we use to put together effective book covers.
So how can we help you? How, what do you want us to do that we don't do enough of? What does the designer want from the writer?
Well, I was on a designer's website the other day, and I was interested to see that they had a fairly long questionnaire for authors who were hiring them to produce book covers. And I thought that was actually a pretty good idea. I've never used a questionnaire myself, but I could see right away that that would work pretty well. And they were asking for things that might stand out, particular events in the book, or what it was that they were trying to accomplish. For me, I don't really usually need a lot of input from the authors. I mean, it's really helpful in the beginning of a new relationship to understand, what your general aesthetic sensibility is, because I mean, as a designer, or my goal in my business has always been, it's not about creating beautiful books. It's not about winning book design awards. My business is completely built around happy authors. Like, my aim is to put the book in your hand that you're just going to love that book. So one of the most common things I do is if I'm designing a book for you, I'm going to ask you to send me, let's say, links on a book site to maybe 5 or 6 books that you just love and you think really are in the same genre as yours. And then I'm going to ask you to send me 3 or 4 that you really hate, that you just absolutely despise. And I'm also going to ask you, because I've run into this problem myself several times, are there any particular colors that just make you feel bad or make you cringe? Because if hot pink is your nightmare, I don't want a book cover, because nobody's going to win out of that transaction. So that's I'm talking very generally here, but that if you hired me today, Orna, to design your book cover, that's exactly what I would do. I would ask you who the book was for. I'd ask you to send me some covers that you liked and some that you didn't like, and then I would go to work.
And the idea of asking me about covers that I don't like is because you don't want to include elements that kind of put me off. You don't want to hand me a cover that has something like that in it, is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look, the interesting thing about the indie publishing world is, it used to be that the book publishers were the clients. In other words, I was a book publisher. I would go to a designer and say, here's a book I'm publishing. I would have a whole marketing plan. I would have a clear idea of who I was marketing it to. I wouldn't be worried about the author, because the author's under contract. They have nothing to say about it. So I'm going to create some consumer product packaging with this other industry professional that suits the need of my company. So designing for publishers is a pretty straightforward business arrangement. Now the client is the author, and the author is also the publisher, but many authors don't actually understand, that business side of publishing yet. They're learning it, but it's just kind of, that's not their business. Their business may be, running a psychiatric nursing home. Who knows? Most self-publishers have a day job, so they've got expertise in another area. So now the author is the client, so it's important for me to make sure that my client is happy with the product I'm producing. And then I'm hoping that my client is going to let me determine what that product should look like. But on the other hand, I still need to make the client happy. So that's a big shift for the book designers, to going from working from publishers, which is kind of a B2B type relationship, to working for authors, which is much more of a retail kind of relationship.
and trickier. And do you find that you as the designer have to think more about readers when you're designing for an author publisher than you do when you're designing for a trade publisher who has a very clear idea of the readership? Do you find that you are also, in a sense, providing a bit of guidance around that when you're working with authors?
Well, you know, the author client is almost always going to need marketing support, and that I'm not talking about hiring a marketing company, but it may be that they need to have in our discussion, in my discussion with the author, that we're going to walk through the process of what the book cover's job is. I don't have to do that with a book publisher or a publisher's art director, which would be typically be my client. But we're going to have to walk through, you know, the whole process of, you know, why certain types of book covers attract readers in your genre, why you shouldn't be trying to buck what people expect in that genre. Now, on the other hand, you know, the self-publishers are a lot more creative, and they really think outside the box a lot more than the art directors at the publishing company who just need to get X number of books taken care of. So it can be a lot more fun for a designer because self-publishers will try stuff that regular publishers will not try, and that's kind of fun.
Sure, I think everybody's been, you know, taken by surprise at just when an indie author gets the design right, just how very right they can get it, and you know, breaking the rules, the established conventions in this, as in everything else. It's great to watch. Do any covers stand out to you in the last while by indies that you think are just outstandingly good that we should be taking a look at? You know, just perfect for their genre, hitting their market really well.
Yes, and all I can say, Orna, is anybody who's interested in covers right now, like maybe you've got a book you're getting ready to publish or you're thinking about it, you know, go and look at these blog posts. I just can't. You know, one of the things that happened with these monthly ebook cover design awards is that, and I hadn't expected this, it kind of turned into I did it because it was educational. I wanted people to understand, you know, what it was that was bad about a cover when you're looking at it, what it was that was good, that was working, and that's why I have, you know, I've done these thousands of these cover critiques. But if you look at those awards, you know, we give out an award for the best cover each month, and we also give out a bunch of gold stars, and we talk about why these covers really work. And if you go and look at them, you know, if you just look at the ones that were the winners or just the gold star winners, you'll see right away, you know, you know, these are really well done. There are no technical errors. You know, the title isn't unreadable. You know, the artwork really focuses you and it hooks you into the story, and it gives you a really clear idea of what's going on. So, and also, of course, as you look through them, if you take the time to like scroll through some of these entries, you're going to start seeing book covers that you like. And you know, we credit the designer on every cover. So what happens is it turns it into kind of like a shopping mall for cover designers. Because it's typically actually kind of hard to find out who designed these book covers. Frequently, you can't find out. If the publisher doesn't print it on the book, you know, it becomes a real pain to figure out who designed that cover. So that's, you know, you can look at all these covers. Every designer is credited, and you can start to see, oh yeah, I really like that girl's covers. You know, every time I see them, they really speak to me. And she's designing the same kind of covers as the books I'm writing, so I think I'll call her up. And many people write to me and say, you know, I found a great cover designer by looking through these blog posts. So that's my advice, and looking at those top 100 lists is also good so you can see what people are actually paying money for.
Yeah, I second the advice to pay a visit to Joel's blog on that, because it is an absolute, each one is a seminar, I think, in book design. Now, if any of our viewers have any questions for Joel, please do submit them and he'll be very happy to answer them. But I'd like you to talk a little bit for a moment about 2015. You've got some interesting things going on that you put in place in 2014, and lots of interesting things coming up in 2015, because of course, you don't just design books. You've become really a sort of one man author education band. You're doing all sorts of things. So just fill us in what 2015 will bring for you, and what you'd like to bring to ALLi members particularly.
Yeah, and I started my blog at the end of 2009, and by about midway through 2010, I really understood that what the market, the people I was trying to talk to really needed was author education. That would solve a lot of problems, and I think that's really kind of what motivated you, Orna, in starting ALLi. Author education, and when I realized that, I started looking for different ways I could help authors reach their own publishing goals. Now, there is one thing I wanted to say about self-published books, and I wanted to mention this, Orna, particularly because you're sitting in London there, and it's related to something you were saying earlier about self-published authors having success with their books. And that is I just had a client who I did a book for, a very dense book on psychotherapy. And this book just recently won an award from the British Medical Association as the best book published in its field in 2014. Now, the British Medical Association Awards, I don't know if you know this, but they actually take into account not just the text of the book, but the way the book is presented, the actual formatting of the book, how clear it is, because many of these books, have very challenging demands for a book designer to present the information in as clear a way as possible for the intended readers. But what really fit, now I was very happy for John, the guy who won it. He's a self-publisher. He hired top quality help to do the book, including the editor, and she was the one who brought the book to me. We did a really kind of involved design for the book because of the kind of material he had in it. But what really thrilled me, Orna, was when I looked at the list of all the runners-up, the people who had lost. It was every major book publisher in the world, like Wiley, McGraw-Hill, and all of these top publishers. And I can't tell you, that really gives me a thrill. I've been doing this a long time, but that was still thrilling to me. Anyway, so talking about 2015, yeah, I have a lot of things in the works. We've talked a lot about cover design. We haven't talked at all about the interior design, and that is realistic. I mean, most people, as somebody who spent many years, tweaking interior designs by little thousandths of an inch, I'm quite aware of the fact that most authors, and indeed most publishers, are not very concerned with the book interiors that they publish. They're looking for something that's industry standard, so there's no mistakes in the way the book is put together, and they want it to be readable, and so the reader will enjoy it. I mean, that's about it. So, having realized that in my own book design practice, I kind of understood that why use templates for their own books. Like they'll give the editor, 10 designs. Pick the one you want, and we'll send it out for layout. So there isn't a lot of design work actually going into these interiors. So I took that idea and I created this website called Book Design Templates. And the idea was to put these tools into the hands of authors so they could kind of do it themselves. And we started out with a lot of pre-designed book templates for Microsoft Word, which was a little controversial, but we seem to have weathered that storm, and we're now converting.
What was the controversy? Can I ask?
Yeah, well, ask any book designer what they think about typesetting a book with Microsoft Word.
Oh, yeah,
and you'll
yeah.
find out the source of the controversy. It wasn't controversial with the authors, Orna. It was only the book designers who started sending me hate mail. But
I get it.
Yeah, we survived, and now we're doing all the templates in InDesign for people who want to use the great typographic power of that program to do their interiors. So we've been expanding that, and we've started adding a lot of author tools to help people, with other tasks besides the interior of their book. And for instance, last year we launched a media kit for independent authors. You know, most authors haven't thought about their media kit. Maybe they know they need one, or they read an article somewhere that said you have to have one, or somebody maybe from the local paper called up and said, hey, you know, can you send me some information on your book or on you? Or you have a picture of yourself, I can run with this article I'm writing about you. So, you know, it's really important for to maximize your exposure of your book, and the biggest way you can do that is via the media. They're the ones who have the attention of all the people, right? So having a media kit is a way for authors to interact with media people. So we put together a product that helped, you know, along with Joan Stewart, who's a publicity professional and a former newspaper editor, to help authors understand what goes into a media kit and how you're supposed to put it together, and to provide them with the tools to do that easily. So that's the kind of author tools we're looking at. We've got a lot more of them coming out this year in 2015, and I'm very excited about that. We've had a tremendous response, and you know, people just seem to love that stuff. It makes your life as an author easier, faster. It makes it more sane. So you actually have some clear and authoritative guidance on what you're trying to do, instead of running around reading like 52 different blog posts on how to write a press release. You know, that's never going to help. That's just going to make you more confused and want to just quit, because it's so exhausting and frustrating. So author tools, complete book production services, book templates, that's the kind of stuff I'm working on now. And of course, I just published a book a few weeks ago.
Yes, your own book. Congratulations. Tell us about it.
Thank you. I published very little, which is kind of ironic since I write about publishing all the time. But this is the first book that I published in the last 3 years. It's called The Self-Publisher's Ultimate Resource Guide. And the whole idea there was, you know, the need of the market. Now, I talked earlier about how nonfiction books are created to meet a need in the market, and this is a perfect example. You know, one of the most common questions I get, and I'm guaranteeing, Orna, that if I asked you, it's going to be one of the most common questions you get, because everybody in this business is the same, really, that way, and that is, you know, how do I find the people I need to help me publish my book? I need an editor. Okay, maybe my day job is, you know, as an electrician or a contractor. How the heck would I know where to find a book editor? I wouldn't. That's the answer. And it's really very confusing. And I would say I spend half the consulting time I spend with authors on helping them pick vendors and recommend vendors and sending them referrals. So I got together with my friend Betty Sargent, who has a very long career in traditional publishing, and together we put together this book that's basically a book of links. It's a resource guide where we've got, at this point, I believe, almost 1,000 people in the book. We've curated these links, we've checked every link out, and we make sure it's current, it's working. These people work with self-publishers, because some people don't work with self-published authors. And then we organized them into 33 categories to make them easy to find. And then we put the categories into 3 sections. So whether you're working on preparing your book, publishing your book, or promoting your book, you can find the people who are going to be able to help you do that. So for instance, if you're looking for a cover designer, we've got lots of them with links in there that you can just click and go right to their site, check out their portfolio, email them, whatever you need to do. And
good stuff, all together in a very well-designed book, no doubt. So congratulations. I'm sure that will go very well for you. We have a couple of questions coming in, because we're as usual, time just gallops by when we're talking, Joel, but you're always so interesting. Yeah, Stephen wants to know are you familiar with the website 99 Designs? What is your opinion, or do you have any suggestions for using the website 99 Designs? I'm not familiar with it myself. Are you?
I'm very familiar with it, Orna, and it's a source of another controversy. And,
okay, talk to us.
You know, the 99 Designs is a site, it's basically an auction site. So I can go to 99 Designs and I can say I need a book cover, And this is, I can give all the information about the book, and then I can say my budget is $300, $400, whatever my budget is. And then in response, the designers who have signed up with 99 Designs will start to design book covers. Now, I might, if I posted that job, I might get 40 cover designers who actually will design the cover and post it. Now, you understand they're doing this, they're not getting paid, okay? So
Seems crazy.
I might pick the 3 I like best and tell those designers, I like these 3 the best, but I don't know which one, would you make this more yellow, or do you think this should be bigger? And then they will work on that, and then at the end I'm going to pick the one winner. And that person is going to get the $300. The other people are going to get nothing, except the experience of having designed a cover that wasn't picked. Okay, so I think you can start to see where the controversy comes from, because a lot of people hate 99 Designs with a passion, and there are other sites like it. It's not the only one. 99 Designs is very popular, however. So what we learned from that is that although there are people who hate it, there are thousands of people using it. Okay, so I've run articles on 99 Designs and exactly how to use it and step through the process and how you fill out the forms and all the kind of stuff we do on how-tos. And I can understand, as somebody who's made a living for many years as a designer, I can understand some of the people who are upset because they feel like it's disrespectful somehow. I don't quite get that, since we're all consenting adults. And certainly nobody has to design book covers for nothing on 99 Designs if they have something better to do with their time. On the other hand, and certainly there are a lot of people, there are a lot of people who are good at design, but who are really bad at business. True for young designers, they just don't get it. They think all they have to do is design, and they're going to make a living. And then it's shocking to them when they find out that doesn't work. So, those type of people participate in 99 Designs. Now, on the other hand, we have people like Damanza, who's a brilliant cover designer from South Africa. And he has won my competition numerous times because he's just a really good designer, particularly for fiction. And I've sent many, many clients to Damanza. And so it was really surprising to me to find out that he got his start on 99 Designs. He got it by going into the competition, doing book covers. Sometimes he'd win, sometimes he wouldn't. But he started winning enough at the time that he realized that this was a good thing for him to do. He doesn't do it anymore. He's got a successful studio. He's got other designers working there now. He's doing hundreds of book covers. It's a big win. But, he was very grateful to 99 Designs as a platform to give him a start in this business. So I could tell you the perfect person to use 99 Designs, and that is my ex-wife. My ex-wife has a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems making decisions. So she was publishing a book just a few months ago, and I designed a cover for her, and then she started tweaking it. And I said, well, I'm not too happy about that because you're a PhD psychologist. You're not a freaking designer. So, eventually she just really had a lot of trouble picking from things. So I told her, I said, look, I know this great site, 99 Designs. Go over there and get a cover design, because that way you'll be able to see every possibility and you'll be able to pick exactly what you want from, limitless possibilities. And it worked perfectly for her. She got the design she loved, and boom, the book got published.
There you go. The book designer versus 99 Designs, and 99 Design wins. Wow. It seems like a very good deal for the author, actually, but not so much for the designer.
Well, you have to realize, Orna, that there are not top quality in-demand book designers on 99 Designs. Why would they be? Okay, so
Sure.
What you're basically going to be dealing with is people who can't really figure out how to do it as a business, and young designers just hungry to make a start. So if you find a good designer who's young, hey, that's a win from what I can see. If anybody really wants to go into this in more detail, there were maybe 100 or more comments on that blog post about 99 designs on my site, and some of them ripping me up pretty bad, even for just publishing the article. I didn't even write it, by the way. And you know, other ones saying, you know, they used it and it worked great. So yeah, it does work. But you have to realize that, you know, what you're dealing with. You're not going to be dealing with a seasoned professional who's designed hundreds of covers and knows exactly what they're doing for every genre, because those people aren't, you know, they're not that needy.
Okay, that's great. And Stephen is really delighted with your answer. Nice of you to say so, Stephen. We have a question here. What is the latest trend in book design, and should writers think about, you know, what's trendy or trending?
No, I really, you know, unless you're writing, you're a visual professional, or you're a designer, or you're writing about stuff that really is critical, where design is a critical element. You know, I think most authors have two real obligations. One is to keep writing, and the other is to market their writing. And by market, I mean talk to other people who share their passion about the subject that they're passionate about. I mean, that's nothing more to it than that. And I think all the other elements of book publishing are really secondary, tertiary, really not that important. It's more important to have a relationship with somebody who you can rely on, who you know is going to produce a really good book for you and not embarrass you or put the page numbers on the wrong pages or leave running heads off or something like that, or flake out in the middle of your job and just never answer your emails. So, you know, if you're going to be writing books and self-publishing them for a while, I would highly recommend finding somebody really good and just establishing a relationship with them. And that's really going to suit you the best over time. You're going to get really good, highly readable, good-looking books, and somebody you can talk to, you know, because if you have a long-term relationship with somebody, you're always going to get a lot more value out of the experience.
And it's the joy of being indie, I think, is that we are working together in that way, creative to creative, you know, having that sort of discussion. Because I have to say, my experience in trade publishing was I hated my first cover with a passion. You mentioned colours that you hate. Hot pink was the colour indeed on those books, and at that time, hot pink spelled chiclet, and I felt, you know, the whole marketing that was built into that book was built into that cover, and I really didn't like it. And it was such a joy for me to, you know, 6 years later, be able to take that material and work with the designer and have those conversations. I love actually the cover design part of the job. I think it's one of the great joys of being indie. And it's just great working with another creative and to sort of encompass the vision in a different sort of way. So as always, thought-provoking and really, really interesting. Thank you so much for coming along to share your expertise with us. Can you just tell people how they can find you and find your new book?
Well, the best possible way is to head over to my blog, because that's ground central for me. That's my hub for all my connections, and that's at thebookdesigner.com. And there are links there to all the things we've been talking about today, and you know, there might even be some articles that would help you get your book ready. I think right now, the last time I checked, we're up around 1,400 articles on book publishing, book design, fonts, typography, marketing, editing, etc. So it's a great repository for information, and thebookdesigner.com. That's the place.
Thebookdesigner.com, absolutely. And if you forget that link, Joel is our book design go-to advisor. So you'll always find him on the advisor page and on the ALLi website. Thank you so much, and look forward to talking to you again soon, and see you everybody for our ALLi Insights seminar next month. Take care, have a good month. Bye-bye.